This is the Health and Wealth Radio Network.
I'm not afraid of Vladimir Putin.
Why don't y'all go back to Russia where you damn belong?
That's sad and messed up, but it gets worse.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation.
And welcome back once again to the Health and Wealth Show. David Ernest, I see him over there. David, that's you, right? Because I see two gentlemen with lovely white hair. Mine's not quite caught up yet. I'll let you introduce your special guest today.
We have Congressman Mo Brooks. How you doing, Congressman?
I'm doing fine. How about y'all today?
We're doing fantastic. We're just trying to figure out, why there's so many lies out there today, these days, especially when it comes to that advertising. It's sort of like liar, liar, pants on fire,
Unfortunately, there is
no facts.
There is no honesty requirement in politics anymore. Back in 2017, by way of example, the establishment, Mitch McConnell forces, the open border forces, collectively, they spent well over $10 million trying to portray me as Nancy Pelosi's best friend, as opposed to the United States military, and as opposed to the Second Amendment right to bear arms. Now, think about that. No one in Alabama as Republicans going to win a Republican primary being good buddies with Nancy Pelosi. Clearly, that's false. But unfortunately, a lot of voters didn't do enough homework to figure out what the true facts are. How about the Second Amendment right to bear arms? No one is going to get elected in a Republican primary being weak on the Second Amendment to bear arms. That didn't stop Mitch McConnell and crowd from saying it. So you can just go down the list of all these different things that they say. Military, my district has more people in national defense than the rest of the state of Alabama put together, either civilian contractors or civilian federal government employees that are in the defense sector or military personnel. I'd never get elected if I was anti-defense, but that doesn't stop these people who don't care about the truth saying the things that they say.
I'm totally agree with you, Congressman. It's just really strange, though, that they would go back and take something that was out of context, like something that was so many years ago when you were with the Ted Cruz campaign, and make it look like it's something recent. And we all know that Trump loves you. He endorsed you. His son said that he endorsed you recently. And it's just a fact. It's like they're trying to cloud the truth. The truth being, Trump endorsed you. He did endorse them. He actually did not endorse them. And they're trying to twist that truth so that they will get elected. That's like liar, liar, pants on fire, Congressman.
Something you got to deal with. Unfortunately, the open borders crowd, they have a lot more money than we do. And so they're spending it freely. And I'm not able to rebut every single one of the attacks that are launched. But let me give you some background. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump endorsed Mo Brooks for the United States Congress in 2018. Donald Trump endorsed Mo Brooks for the United States Congress in 2020. And now Donald Trump is endorsing Mo Brooks for the United States Senate in 2022. Now, on the flip side of the coin, I was Donald Trump's co-chairman of his 2020 election campaign in the state of Alabama. In 2016, I cut a four-figure check to help Donald Trump win the state of Florida. And in 2020, I cut two different four-figure checks, one to send the Alabama strike force to another state to try to help Donald Trump win that state. And another one was directly to his campaign. The reason I emphasize these things is this. Mike Durant and Katie Britt claim that they're longtime Donald Trump supporters. Well, my response is, prove it. I've got canceled checks. I've got public statements supporting Donald Trump. Where are your public statements in 2016 or 2020 supporting Donald Trump, Mike Durant and Katie Britt? For that matter, where are your canceled checks that show that you helped Donald Trump win in 2016 and 2020? Now, maybe they're out there. I don't know. I've never seen them. No. But I'll tell you what, in the campaign format, I would not take their words for it. And I do want to emphasize one other thing. Yes, when I was Ted Cruz's campaign chairman in 2015 and 2020, I did what a campaign chairman is supposed to do, carry forth the message of that campaign. But, and this is a really big but, Donald Trump knows all this stuff, and he is familiar with it. He's the one who's decided to endorse Mo Brooks for the United States Senate in full awareness of this stuff. And if it's good enough for Donald Trump, I ask, why isn't it good enough for Katie Britt and Mike Durant? Why do they keep criticizing the judgment of Donald Trump in this matter?
A very good question. And they try to, I'll say it. I know you're trying to take the high road, Congressman. I know that. You said that you don't want to say anything bad about him. You're just defending yourself. And so I'll say it. Why do they want to lie by misrepresentation? And you know what I think, and I've read enough about this, you can agree with me if you want to, special interest is funding them. Special interest is funding them. That same special interest does not want to fund you as much. Therefore, you don't have the funds like they do to advertise these massive advertisements that they're advertising that are actually lies. They're lies. Lie, pants on fire, as far as I'm concerned.
I think you're spot on. I don't know that I can add anything to it.
Well, it angers me when I hear that, because I get asked these questions all the time, Congressman, from people said, I don't understand why would he have said those things? And I say, he didn't. That was a long time ago. They took it out of context. You understand? That's misrepresentation. Would you want to vote for someone who was misrepresenting things to you? I say no. But anyway, we could get on with this, but Pinocchio's nose will get really, really long in this show. It's just very, very, very disheartening to see such ridiculous things going on in this race.
Well, the United States Senate seat is a very important position that affects the future of the United States of America in a major way. And there are special interest groups that covet the cash more than they covet what's in the best interest of the United States of America. And they see this as an opportunity to profit from electing the United States Senate. And so they are investing millions, if not tens of millions of dollars accordingly. And they are not constrained to tell the truth. I wish it was otherwise, but they are not constrained to tell the truth. And the people, the special interests that are hiring, their obligation is to win. And I would expect that they probably have win bonuses if their candidate wins. And that's a lot of the times that's the way it happens in these campaigns. And if there is that kind of win bonus, that's a huge incentive to disregard the truth and say whatever they believe needs to be said in order to help their candidate prevail. So that's where we are with Mike Durant and Katie Britt right now.
And just so many lies. I mean, like this is going on in our state in this campaign you're in. But there's other misrepresentations, like you obviously heard the State of the Union address, and a lot of us were floored when President Biden said that he was trying to rectify the immigration problems.
Well, you have to understand what they mean. From their perspective, rectification means giving amnesty and citizenship to millions upon millions of illegal aliens. That's their cure. They don't want to have any illegal aliens because they want to make them all legal. Okay? Right. So if you understand where they're coming from, then yeah, that's their rectification. That's their cure to the problem. And I'm not saying that in jest. I'm very, very serious about it. This past year on the House floor, there were two different bills for amnesty and citizenship passed by the Socialist Democrats and the Rhino Open Borders Republicans, which are another problem. But you put the two together, and they had the votes to pass two pieces of legislation. One was 2+ million amnesties and ultimately citizenship for agricultural workers. And the other was for another 4 million in a more broad sense, totaling over 6 million. Now think about how that's going to impact the Senate races, the congressional races, the presidential races, the governor's races around the country, given that households with illegal aliens in them are far more likely to be on welfare than any other kind of household in the United States of America. That's a made for Democrat voter, and by golly, they're going for it. And unfortunately, that's what Joe Biden was talking about in his State of the Union address.
That's very, very sad. Another thing that I heard during this conflict with Russia and the Ukraine was that a lot of these immigrants were not vetted properly when they came in. In other words, I read somewhere that as many as 50 or 100 dangerous terrorists may have come through the Biden vetting of the folks that are trying to get out of Ukraine.
Well, I'm familiar with that with respect to Afghanistan. We had I don't know the real number. I'm not sure if anybody really knows the real number. I've heard numbers in the upper tens of thousands, and I've heard numbers over 100,000 that were being brought into the United States with improper vetting. I'm not familiar right now with refugees coming from the Ukraine all the way in the United States of America, that they've made it across the border, they've made it through all the European countries they have to make it through, and have entered the United States. Maybe that process has begun. I expect it will, but if it has already started, I'm unfamiliar with the details.
Yeah, well, that is for sure happened probably with the Afghans, as you said, which makes it very dangerous for our citizens here. You know, the other things that seem to be very, very disheartening and we're so, afraid of as a citizen of the United States is what could have been done better. And we're all convinced that Trump could have done something better to have helped Ukraine more, like weapons or other things that could have been done that they're not doing. It's just, for example, continuing to buy the oil from Russia and things like that. How do you feel about all that?
Well, in my judgment, Putin would not have dared to invade the Ukraine if Donald Trump had been president of the United States. One thing about Donald Trump is he has an image of toughness. Another thing about Donald Trump, especially in foreign relations matters, is he creates a degree of uncertainty where you don't really know what he's going to do until he's done it. And you put those two things together, and that acts as a huge deterrence to an aggressor nation like Russia under the guidance of Putin attacking the Ukraine. Contrast that with what we have in the White House now, Joe Biden. Joe Biden has the reputation of strength of a marshmallow. In addition to that, he's got the reputation of incompetence, as evidenced by the botched withdrawal out of Afghanistan that cost 4 more lives than it should have if Joe Biden had actually listened to and followed the advice of our military leaders in the Pentagon. So aggressor nations see that weakness, they see that perceived incompetence, and so they act. And it's my judgment that those two weaknesses by Joe Biden are what contributed to, if not were the primary cause of Putin believing that he could actually attack Ukraine without any significant consequential effects to Russia from the United States. Now, time will tell what we end up doing, but I'll tell you what my position is. I have to emphasize it's a little bit flexible because there's so many uncertainties. I don't know what's going to happen next, but in my judgment, Europe needs to take the lead role. This is a European problem. And if Europe takes the lead role in supplying weapons to the Ukrainians in order to help them better defend their nation, I'm all on board, and the United States ought to assist. If the European nations decide that they want to advance that a little bit further and help the Ukraine people with troops, and they ask the United States to join in, I am willing to consider that. Not sure I'd do it, but I'm willing to consider that, provided Europe is going to have a bulk of the forces coming from Europe. I don't want another one of these situations where we have these multinational teams and it turns out it's really the United States of America with our Treasury and our military personnel and the attaboy support of the other nations. I want them to be investing their treasuries. I want them to be risking the lives of their military personnel, just as they expect the United States to. And Europe, again, this is a European issue. They should carry the bulk of the military burden before they dare ask the United States of America to assist with our treasury and our military personnel at the same time.
It makes sense. Makes a lot of sense because they're the ones that are in more danger than us anyway, although we're all in danger when it comes to the things obviously that are happening to us, like the inflation front. And speaking of inflation, Congressman, I understand you have a degree in economics.
Yes, sir. Highest honors, Duke University.
That's very good. To have someone like you in the Senate that has this economics knowledge, this business knowledge, it would probably be very, very valuable, because we have these problems called inflation. Because just look at the gas. I mean, people are very, very angry. And I think there's people angry on all sides of every party right now because of the gas crisis. And I'll call it a crisis. It reminds me, and you're about my age. You remember 1973 and 74 gas crisis very well, I'm sure. Where they were even rationing gas. And I hope it doesn't come to that. But, people are asking all the time, why don't they open up the gas line? I even heard Senator Manchin say something about a gas line needed to be opened up the other day. Well, I mean, what's the holdup?
Well, the holdup is the Biden administration and the Socialist Democrats, who are hell bent on hurting our economy by depriving us of the economic decisions that normally would flow with energy production. Instead, they're trying to put the heavy boot of the federal government on the throat of energy producing things that we can do in the United States of America, oil and gas being principal ones that the Biden administration is attacking. By way of example, the Biden administration unilaterally, abruptly canceled the Keystone Pipeline. Well, that's oil that could have been shipped from Canada, which would have increased the supply of oil and ultimately gasoline and diesel fuel in the United States of America, thereby pressing down the price because you have an increased supply. That's economics 101. So that's one thing that the Biden administration did wrong right off the bat in the first day or two or three of Joe Biden taking office. Another thing that he has done is he has attacked our ability to actually produce oil in the United States of America. He's made it harder for fracking to occur, which is a way to get at hard to get oil. Previously, we would not be able to get it because the cost of production is so high. But with fracking as a technique, you can get to oil and capture it when previously you could not. But the Biden administration is attacking it. The Biden administration is also making it much more difficult to be able to drill. It used to be a lot easier, by way of example, to get the permits to drill on some of these properties. And now the Biden administration is making it much more difficult. And heaven knows what they're doing in the refinery industry. It's one thing to have oil. It's another thing to have gasoline. In between is a refinery. And you have to have it if you're going to convert oil to gasoline. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Biden administration has also made that prohibitively expensive for the United States of America, the private sector, to invest in refineries that ultimately produce the gasoline and diesel fuel that power our economy. So the Biden administration on the energy side of the coin has been wrong 100% of the time when they've involved themselves. And that does not look good for the United States of America. It does not look good for our gross domestic product. And you're seeing the horrible effects with inflation.
So getting back again, Congressman, we were talking about a little earlier about special interest groups. Certain special interest groups don't really care much for you because you're not going to do what they want you to do because you're not taking the payoff. Obviously, you're refusing the payoff, and they're saying, well, if you don't take the payoff, we're going to give you the cutoff to not get the funds to campaign. But seems like you still may be doing pretty good even without their funds. This tells me a lot about the average Alabamian. They can see through all this smoke screen of all this bad misrepresentation, all these advertisements that are going on that are not truthful. But when you win, and I'm saying when you win because I think you will, especially if people understand this and hear what we're talking about, do you plan on doing some things differently that are going on now? Do you have some ideas about things that are going on in Alabama that you would want to talk about?
Well, absolutely. I will do a lot of things different than what's happening now. By way of example, you brought up that I have an economics degree, highest honors, Duke University. Mm-hmm. Well, we have a $30 trillion debt. No nation in the history of the world, has done what we are doing without ultimately collapsing or suffering from tremendous economic dislocation with the damage, injury, and death that ensues from an impoverished nation. And I'm going to be one of those that is going to be fighting these socialist and Republican debt junkies alike. And that's one of the reasons why they don't want me in Washington, D.C., because I'm going to point out very visibly the fallacy, the danger in what these debt junkie Republicans and socialists are engaged in with these out of control deficits and accumulated debt. By way of example, 2 years ago, our deficit was $3 trillion. I'm rounding off. Last year, it was $3 trillion. This year, it looks like it's going to be somewhere between 1 and 2 trillion. You can't do that indefinitely. That's another cause of inflation. You're devaluing the value of the dollar. Okay, that's a bad thing. But going to another thing, you mentioned the special interest groups. Yep, the special interest groups in Washington, by and large, don't like me. You know why? Because I tell them, I don't care how much money you give me, you have to convince me that what you want is in the best interest of America. If you persuade me, I'm for it. But if what you say tells me that all you're trying to do is pad your own wallet to the detriment of the United States of America, I'm voting against it. And I'm not just voting against it, I'm going to visibly fight it and try to kill whatever it is you want to do. Now that really gets special interest groups perturbed. But here is the underlying problem that you have in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. may be illegally corrupt. We can debate that, but quite clearly it is legally corrupt. And in this sense, now, David, you may not know this, but in order to get a major committee assignment, and we rank our committees as A, B, C, you know what the ranking's based on? How much money you can get from special interest groups if you're on one of those committees. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be chairman of a major committee like an A committee, then you can expect that your initial bid price will be $1 million before you're even considered for it. Now, here's the problem with that. A congressman can't easily get $1 million from Jane and Joe Citizen that he represents. Mm-hmm. The only place he can get that kind of money is from special interest groups. Right. And the special interest groups are going to demand a quid pro quo, which in turn means that they have successfully corrupted the public policy debate. And if you don't mind, right, I'll give you a really good example. There's a congressman from Kentucky. He's a libertarian Republican by the name of Thomas Massie. He's a brilliant guy. He's got an MIT degree. His wife has an MIT degree. He's got a lot of patents. He's done very well for himself financially with his brilliance, and he's now a United States congressman. Well, a lobbyist went to him and said, hey, Congressman Massie, if you'll support this patent bill, then I'll pay your $500,000 fee to be on the Ways and Means Committee. That's an A committee. It controls tax law, where there's a lot of things that can be done, like subsidies, like deductions, like tax credits. So a lot of money can be made for special interest groups if they can get good people on Ways and Means. And Thomas Massie said, well, so what's the deal? I just got to look at your bill and sponsor it. And the lobbyist says, absolutely. You do that, you sponsor it, I'll come up with the $500,000 to get you on Ways and Means. So Thomas is a really good congressman, okay? He looked at the bill, and despite that $500,000 inducement, he said, nope, not going to do it. And the lobbyist said, okay, well, I'm not coming up with the $500,000 then. Quid pro quo, right? You would think that would be illegal. It should be illegal.
You would think so.
So Thomas got that published on the front page of USA Today. And I'm pretty much telling you the story as it was related on the front page of USA Today. And I hate this system that corrupts our public policy debate. Exactly. So I went to Thomas Massie and I said, Thomas, I'm glad you did what you did. I've been trying to publicize what's going on that helps American people better understand why our governance is so bad at Washington, D.C. And Thomas comes back to me, he says, well, Mo, I made one big mistake. And I'm going, I read the article 2 or 3 times, Thomas. I saw no mistakes. Thomas said, well, I made one big one. I talked about it in terms of buying committee assignments. Really, it's a rental agreement because you got to pay up every 2 years. This is a problem.
It's the corrupt system. I mean, it's the system that we have to deal with, and that's what I keep trying to tell some folks about what you're fighting. And they say, why can't he get the money that the others can get for this campaign? And you just said it. It's because you're not agreeing to the things that they want you to do or to present or to be for, because you don't think that all those things are good for the Alabama citizens as a whole. And, you know,
can I use one
that's
example?
Very honorable.
Can I bring up just one big example?
Sure.
Okay. I'm ranked number 1 out of 435 congressmen on border security, according to Numbers USA, which evaluates our records on border security. Now, there are 2 groups that want open borders. One are the Democrats, and that's a power play because they want to give these folks amnesty and citizenship, in which case socialism forever, okay? But the other consists of the United States Chamber of Commerce and other business elements that would prefer to hire cheap foreign labor, even if it's illegal alien labor, rather than pay Americans a living wage. Now, these people come up with millions, tens of millions of dollars each election cycle to try to influence the outcome of these elections in order to ensure that they have an open borders congressman and senator coming from their congressional district and their state. Well, in the state of Alabama, you've got open borders, cheap foreign labor special interest groups in a major way, putting millions of dollars into the campaign efforts, either directly to Katie Britt's campaign or indirectly to super PACs in order to keep Mo Brooks from being elected to the United States Senate. Because you know what? I might actually be able to do something about border security in the United States Senate that I can't do in the House, because as a senator, you have greater influence over legislation. So these special interest groups generally, and the open borders special interest groups in particular, have looked at the 6 candidates running for the United States Senate in Alabama, and they've decided that Katie Britt is the one who's most favorable to them. And I hope that the people of the state of Alabama will figure this out. But there's an old saying in politics: follow the money. Exactly. Follow the money. And if you do that, you'll pretty much figure out who is indebted to whom. And on my side, I'll tell you who I'm indebted to. I'm indebted to conservatives who believe in the foundational principles that have combined to make America the greatest nation in world history. That's the plus side. The negative side is that we conservatives tend to be frugal, and it sure is a lot harder to get money from people whose only motivation for contributing is good governance, as opposed to a profit, which is what these special interest groups are motivated by.
Yeah, Congressman, we're going to have to take a break right quick. Do you want to just say like one sentence? Because half of this will be a television show, and the old part, the entire part, will be a radio show. As we close out here, you want to say something to the television folks real quick, 30 seconds?
Yes. If you believe in the foundational principles that have combined to make America the greatest nation in world history, then I, Mo Brooks, ask for your vote and your support. Please go to mobrooks.com, volunteer. That's what's necessary in these most challenging and troubling times.
Thank you.